Making sure that the books are including all is
Where's your sister? Where's your little sister? She's at home. Mommy didn't bring her little sister. So y'all have to go back and get her.
I'm glad to see everyone here today. Today we have a special guest, Miss Stephanie James Harris. She's the director, the commissioner of the Amistad bill, and she will tell you about that when she comes up here. Great stuff, great stuff. But today we will be celebrating our 63rd consecutive month of Black History here at the Irvington Library. Today, want to hear me? This program started because I became a member of an organization for progress. And I had also started a nonprofit, Hope by Faith. So this program is actually a nonprofit up under
Hold on,
Hope.
hold on a second. I'm holding her up because you're putting chairs right in front of our camera person. I want to make sure he gets up. I got to edit. But y'all don't want you to edit her. All right, as you were.
I forgot what I said.
You start from the stop. That's all right.
Yeah, the program. It's a nonprofit up under Hope by Faith that became incorporated last year in November, so that we could try to get some money and grants for the program, because up until now we have been with the volunteers and the help with some of the people in the community and different organizations. We have been doing this program out of pocket. And this program came to be because during our meetings we have a timeline of different things that happen in history. And I found out that I was told a lot of lies in school. And so I'm like, the age I am, a lot of the books have not changed. So that means our children are being told these same lies. So I looked around our organization. I really didn't see a lot of young people. So I figured we need some young people to carry on what we're dropping off at, because, you know, we're not getting any younger, and we're going to need the young people to carry the torch for us and to carry on our history and to make sure that our story is being told correctly and accurately, and that they gain more self-esteem of who they are from learning about their history. What else can I say? The way we do the program is that every month we will pick a person whose birthday was in this month. Although Miss Stephanie's birthday is not in this month, she's supposed to be here for our 5th annual Black History program, our Kwanzaa program, but the weather was bad, so she promised to come at a more appropriate time, which was Women's Month. So thank you for coming. And this program is based on the Amistad bill. I had learned through our meetings that there was a bill that was passed in 2002 that our history should be taught in our schools, included in our social studies, not only in February but throughout the year. That people need to know the contributions, not only the bad things like slavery, and most of the time when you're learning about Black history in school, you're going to start off at the point of talking about slavery, but we didn't do that in this program. We started off talking about the greatness of our people from Africa, I had chose for Miss Stephanie to come. I know some of you here, you probably said, "Hey, let me tell you," but I had went to one of the institutes that was going on during that summer program. And I mean, those 3 days made an impact on my life. It really did. And it made me think more about this program, but I thought I was going crazy at one point because at the time we were talking about, we was doing a program of Emmett Till, and Dr. Harris had stated that we was doing Emmett Till because of her son, and her son is one of the sweetest little guys you could meet, and I was thinking of him being Emmett Till when she was telling the story, and you know, I'm just looking at him like hanging from a tree. But that vision came in my mind. And so since August, you know, sometime when I would be going to sleep, you know, like they gave us a book on lynching. I would see these people, it seemed like they were still swinging from the tree and was talking. And I don't know what they're saying to me, but I know they're talking, so I didn't want to tell anybody because they're going to be like, okay, she done flipped for real. So when I called Miss Stephanie and I was telling her about the dreams, I'm glad that she gave me confirmation that I was having these dreams, because what happened to our people is in our DNA. And it was just their way of telling me to keep telling the story, because trust and believe, if we don't tell our story, it's gonna come out to be something where it already is something else.
Right.
We have half-truths, we have lies, and sometimes if you keep hearing a lie, finally it becomes the truth. And I have a granddaughter now, and I don't want her to grow up the way I was growing up. And I think with these kids, the more you go through the Black history, you see that the people who changed things, they were all young people. And so I had noticed that when we do the pictures of these people, they always showing the older pictures of people. And I'm like, maybe the kids be thinking like, oh my God, they didn't do anything when they were young. They waited till they got like grandma or mother age or something before they done something. And that's not true. So I try to find the youngest picture of people to let them know that they were young when they started this. And I saw the Crusade March of the Young People, and that one like blew me away. I also saw that film at our organization. I mean, they were little kids like 7 years old. Oh, I'm going to jail for the cause, and these little kids was jumping out the window, but they was keeping the jails filled. And when I had met Miss Claudette, she told me that the kids had to do it because the adults was afraid to do it.
Absolutely. Wow. Too much to lose.
Yeah, she said they were gonna lose their jobs. But you know, young kids, they're invincible. They think nothing can happen to them. They had the energy, so they wanted to change things. So out of all of that, this is our program. And the meaning of their name is that it's children of right now, because someone asked, well, like, are there like kids that you could just point to? There's some kids in here that have been here from the beginning, like Jalen. I think Jalen was like 3. Jalissa, she was like 3 when she came, right?
Now, that's right.
So she a big girl now with like 3rd grade.
Yeah. She's shy.
I think Justin was little too when he had came, but it was the children that was coming. So in the beginning, it was like all children in here, and they was quite satisfied. Then sometimes I noticed that they would get upset when the adults start coming in, because adults have a way, my opinion, of underestimating the intelligence that children have, telling them they don't know this, they don't know that. But I've heard the most intelligent thing come out of kids' mouth that will put an adult to shame, especially when we was talking about the Black Panther movie. I had not seen it, but their thoughts on what was going on in that movie. I think one of the young boys, he was saying Afrofuturism. And I'm like, what's that? You know, I ain't one that, so I'm like, what's that? So, you know, you got your phone, you're trying to Google stuff. You know, like, while you talking. And, you know, and I know that it empowered, like, the young girls, no matter how young they were. So we had took a group of kids to go see it. But mostly our program is whatever the kids want to talk about, this is their program to direct, to open up their feelings about stuff. And sometimes, even though it's a planned program, if it's something that's bothering them, sometimes the conversation will go somewhere else, and we don't even do the program. We would talk about stuff. One of the issues was like with Sandra Bland. I didn't think the kids was really looking at the news like that, but they had their own, they analyzed her death, like, why was she laying in that position? And when I take pictures, I'm on the bed laying like that, and how they positioned her, like, in that situation. And one kid said that lynching to them was when they take her uncles and cousins and lock them up to her. That was her form of lynching, and it's not what we think. So when the parents are in here, I try to encourage them, if that kid want to raise their hand 1,000,000 times, let them raise their hand and let them ask their questions, because we don't know what they're thinking. And when we think we know the solution to them, for them, we don't know it, because I've heard a lot of kids say, oh, they think they know everything because they grown ups, but they never asked us what was bothering us or what they can do to help us. And quite honest, we don't. We think we know all the problems that's going to solve our kids' problems, but the right now in their name is that these kids are not the kids that grew up when we grew up, because we had our neighbors and the teachers called the house. The teachers sometimes came to you. That's not happening today. Rarely, if it does happen. And so these kids are right now are like latchkey kids. A lot of them probably don't see their parents till they come home from work. Some of their parents are locked up and they don't see them, and they're raised by their grandparents. So this is their place right here to release themselves at the end of the month and to talk about what's going on for them. And I have a lot of volunteers and a lot of parents, and I am so thankful for their support. I don't want to start calling out names because I don't want to forget any, I wouldn't want to forget anybody's name, and they would think that I wasn't thinking of them. For the parents that are here, that help me every month, and the visitor that come every month, I say thank you to you guys. And basically, that's it. Now we will start our program, and that would be with Baba Zahid, starting off with our libations.
Dr. Stephanie?
Yes.
You got your student wide open. Okay?
I'm glad.
And she, yes, as teachers, we love that, right?
That's what teachers supposed to do.
That's right, that's right. Just some house business. Before I do the libation, some folks I want to introduce to each other and to our guests, because y'all are important to us moving this work in our community. He just walked in, and he's an old soldier, been out here longer than I have, and I've been out here a long time, right? His organizations have been some of the few actually pushing on the Amistad question, right? Mr. James Harris, NAACP, Jersey Black Issues, and the Jersey Association of Black Educators is in the house, right? We have our in-house author who gave us something very valuable that I'll talk about when I talk about the ancestors, particularly to March, Annette Austin, who was also our representative on our new civilian review board that we've been getting ready to go to war over with the FOP of Newark, because we're going to have our civilian review board, and we're going to have accountable policing in Newark. The time has come, right? To my immediate right is one of my favorite educators, and was a young comrade once upon a time. She used to hang out with Panthers with me, right? This is Principal Charnae Brown, the principal of Central High School.
Yeah.
I want you to give her a round of applause. Right? We're welcome to have back our mentor. She had to take a hiatus because she's growing her family. Right? And that will require you to sometimes take hiatuses, and it's a natural course of things. Right? We miss her dearly. It was good to see her back. My goddaughter, Jalissa McKeechin, is in the house. Give her some love, right? Okay? Our vice chair of the People's Organization for Progress. And for the record, y'all should know, for those of you here for the first time, that the People's Organization for Progress is arguably the premier social justice organization in the state of New Jersey at this particular historical moment. And I'm not saying that because I go back with its chairman for 40 years, he's a friend of mine, but because of the consistency of the work over a period of some 34 years. Okay? Vice Chairman Larry Adams is in the house. Give him a strong right? On the cans is Mr. Jerry. Right? Give him a round of applause. Good to have him back with us. Right? I'm saying can because, I'm in the 20th century, and it's all right. Some of us are comfortable there. All right. And the back, our icy cream lady, Miss Sharon Hand is back with us. Give her a strong hand, right? And our premier elder, been with us on this planet better than 8 decades, a survivor of combat in Korea. I was raised by a Korean vet. That's real stuff, okay? Uphill battle, first war that the United States lost. That's another discussion, right? Okay? Veteran of struggle from the March on Washington and what was popping in Harlem back in the 1960s, Mr. Nat Williams. Give your elder a round of applause. Okay? All right, now, new faces. Huh?
I wanted to stop you.
Do the ball.
Jimmy White was actually, when I started going to POP, Jimmy White was actually the youngest person that was in POP at the time. And Miss Nicole,
Go ahead.
Yeah. I appreciate. She homeschooled her kids.
That's right.
And
That's right.
since,
I was going to get to.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
As you were.
And so, since they have been coming here, Sean has really found a place in my heart because he does Nguza Saba and Justin. I think Justin was a little rocket when he started coming here, but he found his place, and I think he started expressing himself through art. So I stole his first art piece from his grandmother. But I think he's gonna be something in his own time.
We respect a lot of you to be something in your own time. Y'all are the only future we have. Be very clear about that. We're going to talk about that as we get through the programs. New folks, you're going to learn some African words today. Not only will you learn the Nguza Saba, we will get to them in a moment, but just some basic words. And I say Ago, what do y'all say? Now, what does Ago mean? Y'all have forgotten that. See? Close. You're in the ballpark. But no. Right? I go, are you listening? Right? And the answer is what? Y'all just said it before. You ain't got to get that number. Amen. Amen means? Yes, I am. And if you listen, that means you're not talking and you're disrupting it, what was going on, right? Okay. Now, the libation is good. We're going to use the Yoruba language for the libation, some African words. I say Ibaye. What y'all say? What does Ibaye mean?
Giving thanks.
So they can hear you.
Giving thanks.
Right on. Okay? And Ashe means? You're supposed to answer. So be it. It's the foreparent of what you would say amen in the church. It's the foreparent of what you say amen in the mosque. And of course, we say Ashe, because that's what it is. All right? So, I need some volunteers to do this. We're going to combine some things. We usually do the month. The ancestors particular to the month, Dr. Stephanie. But this is also Women's History Month, so we're going to flex it and be inclusive in that respect. I'm going to do 7. We'll stay with 7 for the Nguza Saba. I need 7 volunteers. please step forward or I'm going to draft you.
Kids only?
Kids only. I got 5. I can count to 7. I need 2 more. I'm about to pull you up.
Can I go?
No.
I want to go.
Let's go. But it ain't your time. Come on, you jump in. Come on. No. You do a lot of work. Come with me, son. You got some other work to do. All right, let's see. Huge. Right? Give you that one. We got us a couple of new ancestors. So, this one.
Amen.
That's a fire. That's a rough system right there. Be careful, son. Educational tradition. Let me see how many I got. I got 2 more. That's for you. We do our homework. Give you that. Okay. All right. Now, let's do the 4 directions first and foremost. For the 4 directions, for the north, the south, the east, and the west, we say Ibaye. 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 March 1st. Women's History Month came in hot and heavy before it was Women's History Month. Back in 1984, come with me, son, step forward. Back in 1954, I'm sorry, I said 84. This woman, who I had the pleasure of bringing to New York about 20 years ago, in meeting, is Lolita LeBron. Everybody say Lolita LeBron. Lolita LeBron. You got to say, because that's your answer. Say Lolita LeBron. Okay, Lolita LeBron was a leader of the struggle for independence of Puerto Rico. Right? A lot of folks don't realize it. We were taught in history that America was once a colony of what country? Britain. But we're not taught that America has a colony that it probably shouldn't have, if being the colonial master is a bad thing. And its colony is what? Puerto Rico. And if you raise the volume around independence in Puerto Rico, you usually run into problems with the United States government. Well, this woman dared show the leaders of the United States government, even though you've got this great big army and navy and air force, and you can do all these horrible things to our people, don't let you believe for a minute that white supremacy so privileges you that you can't be touched back. What did she do? She took a squad of Boricua brothers, and they went into Congress, locked and loaded, and popped the place up. Didn't single out, they weren't assassins, they weren't shooting anybody up, but they made a statement that if you do that, do not think that in our quest for freedom, we're not willing to do something back, right? And she went to prison for 25 years, her and her comrades, and is an enormously beloved person to the Puerto Rican people. So, what's her name? Lolita LeBron. What's her name? For Lolita LeBron, we say Ibaye. Somebody got it wrong. Ibaye? All right. Now, let's see. We've got, this is huge. Step forward, princess. Right? March 6, 1857. Any students here who want to be lawyers one day, one of the first things you need to know as children of African descent is the seminal significance of the Dred Scott case. Everybody say Dred Scott. Dred Scott. Dred Scott believed that when he got off of his master's plantation and went to a state that was supposed to be free, that he was free. But there was something called the Fugitive Slave Act that made folks give free folks back to their masters or face consequences. And that went into court. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, the biggest court. And on that date, March 6, 1857, the Supreme Court said, and the Chief Justice was Roger Taney, Chief Justice Taney was a owner of slaves. You should know that. He had some background and some prejudicial issues on the matter, but it wasn't a big deal for them back then because slavery was the order of the day. The white man has no rights that the black man is bound to respect. Dred thought that once he left the plantation and went to a free state, that not only was he free, but he was a citizen. But because of the racist overpinnings and underpinnings of the law at that time, they did not value his humanity, acknowledge his right to be a citizen. So it came down that heavy and that hard for our people for a while, and it was one of the precursors to what later would become the Civil War, right? It is a hugely important case in the history of our struggle. What's the ancestor's name? What's the ancestor's name? What's the ancestor's name? Thank you. All right. Somebody got that. You can't raise your hand during the libation. Oh, I'll get you later. I know Miss Sarah always wants to jump in. As teachers, we do that. All right. Let's see. Come forward, Princess. March 6th, March 7th. Bloody Sunday. Not a single right that we have to this day came to us easy or by anybody being nice to us. That's right. And to be very clear about that. I'm going to go over 3 things particular to March, using that as a window because I don't have pictures for all 3. I'm going to talk about Bloody Sunday, Ponce Massacre, March 21st, 1937, and the Sharpeville Massacre, March 21st, 1960, right? And this is kind of how massacres can look, right? That's a peaceful demonstration. The man here on the ground trying to cover his head. One of the first things you learn in civil disobedience is when you coming under fire, you cover your head, right? Is James Foreman. No, that's not James Foreman. That's Now I need you. I'm having a senior moment. John Lewis. John Lewis. All right.
Congressman.
That's right. Long time. Right? Right? They were savagely attacked, and it happened to be captured on television, and that would lead to a showdown between Southern President Lyndon Johnson, whose liberalism had to be fully tested, and Governor Wallace at the time, over whose force would be the dominant force in determining whether these folks can march along this bridge and securing their rights. And ultimately, federal courts ruled that the right to march was lawful, and Johnson ordered troops to protect the marchers. And just as you saw in the film Selma, which is one of your favorite teaching tools, right? Their third shot, they went all the way to, from Selma to Montgomery. And it was an important moment in our movement. But this particular day, even though it was violent, even though there were a lot of casualties, happened to be a turning point in terms of the evoking of public opinion against the violence being used to put down the civil rights movement. For the ancestors of Bloody Sunday. Now, I move forward. Move back. March 21st, Ponce. I just mentioned Lolita Lebron in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico faced a massacre on March 21st, 1937, which happened to be Palm Sunday. I want y'all to dig this background, right?
That was Easter Sunday.
That sure was. It sure was, right? What a way to celebrate Western civilization, right? Okay? Palm Sunday then, Easter Sunday there. Folks were marching to demand the release of their leader, Don Pedro Albizu Campos, and to commemorate the end of slavery in Puerto Rico, which was on that day in 1873. Peaceful march that was fired upon by the colonial forces of the United States, killing at least 24 people and wounding almost 300. And it was a difficult time for folks daring to assert the right to independence from Puerto Rico. Sharpeville, South Africa, apartheid South Africa. This is before Nelson Mandela is free, young heads, all right? Okay? March led by the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, the PAC, right? Peaceful march, nonviolent march over the hated pass laws. You had to have passes if you were a black person coming into South Africa's cities at those times to work, right? And our folks hated that, right? And so in a peaceful demonstration to condemn the pass laws, they too were fired upon by apartheid military forces. They killed almost 70 people and wounded almost 400. Horrible massacres, right? And it forced all the organizations who were fighting for our people's dignity in South Africa and justice underground because their organizations became banned. So March was loaded, but I use that as a window to come and for y'all to appreciate that. For the ancestors of Bloody Sunday, the ancestors of the Ponce Massacre, the ancestors of Sharpeville, we say Ibaye. Ibaye. I'm not going to ask her to remember all that. That's too much. All right? Thank you, I know what to do. Come here, son. Dr. Stephanie, I want you to tell us who this man is.
That is Peter, Mundy Peterson. I'm sorry, let me get his first name.
Uncle. I'm trying to give you a hint. What's TJ's first name?
Thomas.
There you go.
Thomas Mundy Peterson. Thank you very much. You want to tell the story?
No, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Thomas Mundy Peterson, this ancestor, is important in regards of New Jersey history, but also constitutional history. So this is one of those things that the students should know anyway. Mr. Thomas Mundy Peterson was a resident of Perth Amboy, New Jersey. And as a resident of Perth Amboy, New Jersey, when March, I don't remember the exact date. March 30th, thank you. March 30th, when right immediately following the passage of the 15th Amendment, anybody know what the 15th Amendment to the Constitution did?
Don't say that yet, Mr. Harris.
13th Amendment, there was the three amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, are the three amendments that most people talk about in regards to the Civil War, and in regards of history for this nation, especially in regards of African Americans. 13th Amendment freed African Americans from enslavement, except and unless they are duly convicted of a crime. I always make sure that's stressed.
That's right.
14th Amendment becomes the Equal Protection Clause. It makes African Americans citizens of the United States. And the 15th Amendment, which pertains to Mr. Peterson, is the one that makes loud African American men, the right to vote. When the 15th Amendment passed in the United States, Mr. Peterson, in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, became the first African American man in the United States to vote and register in New Jersey. The election took place on a city council, just on a city council vote. It wasn't a large vote, but he was the first one legally in this nation after the passage of the 15th Amendment to be able to vote. Because of this passage, what also becomes interesting for Mr. Peterson is he also becomes the first African-American man to ever be able to serve legally on a United States jury because he registers to vote. And all of that happens in Perth Amboy, New Jersey.
What's his name?
Thomas Mundy Peterson.
What's his name?
Thomas Mundy Peterson.
All right.
What amendment of the Constitution is he associated with?
15th Amendment.
What amendment? You're dismissed.
And the citizens of Perth Amboy are trying to get a plaque dedicated to him.
We need to make that happen. We need to get in. We will get in that. I'll tell you a story.
It was the biggest slave port.
Yes, yes. And it was the busy slave port, too. Absolutely. Right? New ancestors. Step forward, please.
Brand new ancestor.
Everybody say Linda Brown.
Linda Brown.
Okay? Very important case. I just told you about the Dred Scott case. Right? For the modern epic, Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka Board of Education. This young lady's father got some folks together to sue the Board of Education in Topeka because they would not let her go to the school of her choice.
Across the street.
That's right. And the school that she had to go to was like miles away, right? It was dangerous, right? That's right, okay? Because at the time, the order of the day was segregation, right? And black kids went there and white kids went there. That's how it was. This case challenged that, and the Supreme Court decided that the doctrine of separate but equal, that's right, Grandpa's telling you right, right? Separate but equal is unconstitutional, right? Now, unfortunately, this is one of the reasons why we do this and why this stuff is important. Education in America, public education, is still highly segregated. Not in the sense that it was then with the signs and the formality of it, but in terms of being properly represented and certain standards being met equally across the cultures. We got some serious problems to this day around that particular issue. However, the civil rights movement latched onto that case and used that case to challenge all the other dimensions of formal segregation, and that became the legal weapon that would ultimately lead to the striking down of segregation laws as we know it. So this young lady, 7 years old, Miss Sandra just said, we don't have to be grown and old to make history. 7 years old. Her case went up to the Supreme Court, and it is still making a difference in all of our lives. What's her name?
Brown.
What's her name?
Brown.
Grandpa, make sure you got that right, too. Come, son, come. Step forward. New ancestor, very tragic circumstance. Dr. Stephanie, the thing that drives the work of the People's Organization more than any other issues, unfortunately, is a scourge of police brutality.
I understand.
We have a local ancestor, this is Abdul Kamal, killed in this town. Shot to death 15 times by black police officers with nothing but a cell phone in his hand in front of his home back on November 11th of 2013. The most recent case of that kind was the case of Stephon Clark. March 12th, 2018, not 1918, 2018, at Grandma's house. Grandma's backyard. Nothing, he couldn't even turn around and they dropped him. And not only did they drop him, before they dropped him, they turned off those cameras they're supposed to have on. Okay, a violation of the law. And then after they dropped him, they walked over to him and shot him some more. The slaughter of Stephon Clark, a martyr of the struggle against police brutality, senselessly lost his life at his grandma's house, Sacramento, California, on May 12th, 2018. What's his name?
Stephon Clark.
What's his name, son? Help him, y'all. What's his name?
Stephon Clark.
What's his name? I know you know, right? Okay? Give him a round of applause. Step forward, princess. Now this ancestor here is loaded with stuff she did for our people. Everybody say Mary McLeod Bethune.
Mary McLeod Bethune.
She saw the need for a black school for females, wasn't around. She created it. It is now Bethune-Cookman University. She saw the need for a national black organization that spoke squarely to the needs of black women. Didn't exist. She created it. It is the National Council of Negro Women, and it is still functioning, right? She was the first black person to serve in the 20th century under a presidential cabinet when she served for the National Youth Administration under Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Mary McLeod Bethune. Every black household that has children in it should invest in her last will and testament to young people, right? So I used to run a program that I called the Mary McLeod Bethune Freedom School in Westfield. And I had kids, once they reached a certain age, they had to do the last will and testament as they're coming out to their parents. I'm now 9 years old now, you know, right? And it's the kind of tool that should be used in that way. It's a hugely important educational document. It's a hugely important document of tradition. Tradition disciplines us. Tradition gives us foundation. Tradition gives us direction and perspective, right? It's a hugely important document of inspiration from the elders to our young, right? What's her name?
Mary.
What's her name? Yeah, help me out, y'all. What's her name?
Mary.
What's her name?
Mary.
Right, and your grandpa gonna make sure you get it right, okay? Thank you. Y'all give us some love. Now I have a lot of other pictures on here. Sarah Vaughan, birthday was March 27th, one of the greatest jazz singers that ever lived, right up the hill from Newark, New Jersey, right? Give Sarah a shout out, right?
Yeah.
All the stuff over here, if we have time, we have to do part 2 of the film on Panther. Miss Sandra took a group to see the film Since We Left Last. This came out of that. This was written by a cover of the Black Panther Party. Down on the Eastern Coast. His daddy was from the Baltimore chapter of the Black Panther Party. We'll get into that later, right? Books, hugely important books. It's basic staples that should be in your household. We talked about Claudette Colvin having been with us. Claudette Colvin's book, Twice Toward Justice, is a book you should have. March 2nd, 1955 marked the anniversary of her refusing to get off a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, 6 months before Rosa Parks made her legendary move.
Yep.
Okay? And she was only 14 years old. Right? Only 14 years old. So, you know, I mean, our history is for all of our people. This is a book here that saves lives, saved my life. I literally stole this in the drug transaction. Y'all heard, some of y'all helped me tell that story before. This is Malcolm's autobiography. This literally saved my life. This book, you have the great Annette Austin in the house, and her book, Harriet Tubman for Beginners, right? Something you should invest in, right? Todd Burrows is another pop member. It's his book on Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was one of the first black journalists to put her life on the line to expose the scourge of lynching, and even tried to internationalize the question, traveling abroad to do that. And at times lived with a price put on her head by the Ku Klux Klan. And then there were times when she also was somebody who had to live with some insurance that doesn't have anything to do with insurance policies on paper, but, you know, like what you would call a 9mm or 45 caliber or 380 semi, she had to carry because she was under fire, under real fire. She would ultimately be one of the foremothers of the modern civil rights movement with the Niagara movement, which created what organization, Mr. Harris? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, for the ancestors, but finally, I gotta get these two. Right? This man became an ancestor last month. We talked about him for a hot minute. Dr. Lerone Bennett, right? Very important to my generation, coming to terms with his history and trying to make a difference with history. A legend in Chicago and a legend in historical scholarship. He left on Frederick Douglass's birthday, February 14th. These dates are incredible, the way they were. Right? Women's history, right? Unsung classic that needs to be rediscovered. Paula Giddens, When and Where I Enter. Where and When I Enter, right? So some tools, weapons, depending on your language. I'm an old soldier, so I use the language weapons. Right? But some tools for your families, right? So all of that for the ancestors of March. It will end as we begin for the 4 directions: the north, the south, the east, and the west. We say Ibaye, 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 Ashe, Ashe. Oh, it is done. Now, before I sit down, I have to introduce somebody else because I just texted her and she appeared. I love that, right? Councilwoman Donna K. Williams from the City of Orange is in the house. Right? We've been talking about some stuff. We're trying to start orange. Like I said, you got to meet this sister. Yes, you can. There's somebody here to meet you, okay?
I know, that's my
Right on, right on, right on, right?
This past one to remind everybody that Willie Brown also went on to glory this week.
We did that. We did that. That's when you walked in. Yep, we did that. We got it.
She didn't say so.
At this time, our libations usually don't take that.
You started.
It's all right.
I just need to make a correction on the presentation, because when he made the presentation, he said that white folks had no rights that needed to be
Oh, my
respected.
bad. That's a tongue twist.
So it's twisted around.
That's
What
right.
the
The black man has no rights that the white man is bound to respect.
yes.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Harris.
You're welcome. I just couldn't leave that
Yeah, okay,
alone.
you're absolutely right.
Thank you. Right now, we're getting ready, our lovely voices. We must sing our national anthem, our black national anthem. And what do we do?
Got stand.
All right.
You gotta leave it?
Oh, I don't have my Beyonce voice today. Okay, just, let's go. Justin have anything? Okay. Not today. Jalissa?
Yep, ready?
Yep. Next we will have Jalissa. Jalissa is also an author, but she's our senior mentor in the program. And the way the program goes, the little ones usually do something. If they need some help, they go to the next age, then up, and if they have a problem, they're going to end up with an adult. So by that time, their problem should be solved, because I think that sometimes you should let them kind of work out their own little problems, which sometimes be minor. And by the time they get to us, they be like, forget it. And this is from your book.
Yes.
All right.
First of all, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
That's my daughter.
That's right. That's right.
So the poem that I'm going to share for you guys today is called Love Your Hair. And I'm so grateful that we're in this natural hair movement right now, and hopefully it sticks around forever. So this poem is especially for you little girls and boys. Love your hair. Smooth, silky strands that protrude from your scalp, giving life to new creations. Beautiful, God's given DNA that only belongs to you. Girls, stop letting the images of folks on TV and social media wannabes tell you who you are. You were made special, a mold that cannot be mended. Hair, beautiful, black hair, whether ponytailed or beaded, curly or straight, you determine the look. Reaching for relaxers and weaves, wigs, and extensions will not show the beautiful you. Be yourself, while everyone else is trying to be someone else. Hold your head high, princess. Your hair is your crown and glory. It holds stories of Africa. Your legacy grows with every inch. Stand proud, princess. You have to love yourself enough to accept yourself. Hair, beautiful black hair. Whether it's an afro or two-strand twisted, dreaded or low cut, it's yours. You were made special with precision and care. You should always love yourself and take pride in your hair.
Thank you, Miss Stephanie. Now, what did the hair remind you of? What's his name? He won a prize. You gave him a certificate? He did this. He had
Oh, the
an
young
afro.
boy, yes.
Yeah.
Are you talking about are you talking about the young gentleman?
Yeah.
Yes, he actually won. He won a New Jersey History Day program. It was a young gentleman. I forget his last name. It's going to drive me crazy. His teacher actually told him that he should not do a project on hair. And that's why we featured him. And he came to the Summer Institute and showed us his presentation. He is in 8th grade in Princeton School District.
You mean this happened in the 21st century? This didn't happen back in 1932?
Oh, it just happened in March, and he actually went all the way to National History Day and won second prize, National History Day, on a project on African American hair and its relevance for the Black Arts Movement.
Yeah, throughout the different years, he
Hold
showed.
up. Well, who told him he couldn't do that? Where that happened at?
It happened at his middle school. His
And
middle school
where was
teacher
that at?
in Princeton, New Jersey.
Princeton where?
New Jersey.
Y'all hearing this? Yeah. All right. Just want to make sure we getting this. That's your word. Thank you, Dr. Harris.
I can't remember the little boy's name. I don't make me like that boy's
We
name.
have senior moments because I forget.
We're going to have more. Don't worry about it. There's more to
And
come.
when he came, he had a big Michael Jackson Bush afro.
Right on.
But his pictures, they showed the different hairstyles that happened through the different decades. That's how he did it, and it was really nice.
There's a wonderful documentary that's very hard to find, family, called 400 Years Without a Comb. It was done back in the early 80s. And at the centerpiece of it is, I haven't seen him on right before the Harlem Renaissance. Madam C.J. Walker. She's at the centerpiece of it, but it goes back to our African past and really develops the African past and brings us all the way forward in what we had to go through.
Now, next we'll have
I just
yes.
say, well, before you go while we in hair, you know, in the 60s, I was working at a dental lab, and I think I was the only black fella in there at the time. And he's a nice guy. We were talking about different things, and he came up about hair, and he said something about your hair, you know. And I said, look, take a strand of your hair out, and I'll take a strand of my hair out. And then we were standing up doing this. And I said, now hold your hair up. And he couldn't hold, he tried to hold his strand up. He couldn't. I said, I took a strand of my hair, because I had a big afro then. I took a strand of my hair out, my hair stood straight up. I say, see, my hair is strong.
That's it.
That was the end of the hair conversation.
And y'all in the laboratory too.
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, that's heavy.
I feel bad for not wearing my afro.
Don't worry about that. Right? Don't worry about that. That's lovely.
So right now we're gonna have Mr. Sean and his sister Nikki. Before they start, do anyone have any questions or anything to say? Okay.
Oh no, Nikki got some technology.
Yeah,
with
Nikki
her
wasn't
today.
out today.
She got
Good
some-
afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean, and this is my sister Nikki, and today I'm going to be talking about Women's Month, but I'm going to apply it to the Nguvu Saba. But before I go into Women's Month, I'm going to explain what the Nguvu Saba is. So may I have 4 volunteers, please? Children only?
Just 4?
7.
I didn't even try this time. Children, that was funny.
Yeah, he just walked in. Come on up here. You know I'm gonna get you. Not you, son. No. This young man right here. No. You think I was gonna call him? I drafted him.
Rose Central?
That's right. 20 students? Right on. Okay. Getting tall every time I see you. Look at it.
I need 2 more people.
2 more volunteers. Come on, son. Come on. Right? Not all at once.
One more.
No, Nikki's doing something else. We need one more. He's not gonna be able to hold it. All right, I need 2 more to help him hold it.
He needs somebody else.
Put him in order. Here, I'll just give him out. You put him in order. All right. So let Mr. Sean will put you in order. Right? Okay. Upside down.
These are some good signs. They were made up by Miss Anjanetta Robinson. She was my partner when we first started out, and she's still here.
Where's little? Here
you go.
Come in, son.
She designed these signs, and they've been with us for the last 5
Here,
years.
put him in the aisle. Otherwise, you go back
Yeah,
to
put
the
him in the-
Put him in the aisle.
Huh?
Put him over in the aisle.
But he got Imani. He's supposed to. All right. Let me see. Put him in order first, Sean. Put him in order. Go ahead. Where's Sean at? Go ahead. Put him in order. We're gonna put him in the middle. Whoever has Ujama. Who has Ujama?
Me.
Come trade. So we can put. What's his name? Al-Jakani. So we can put Al-Jakani in the middle because he needs to be in the middle. You take Imani. Right?
She has glasses.
Right? There we go.
She has glasses. Put them down.
There you go. That's right. You got it. For newcomers, he's putting the Nguzo Saba in their number order. That's your son. Can't beat it. Can't beat it when it's in.
Go on, baby.
What you got? Are they in order, sir? All right. As you were.
Now, I will be explaining the Nguzo Saba. The Nguzo Saba are 7 principles that was created by Moana Karenga for us to practice in our everyday lives and celebrate during the cultural celebration of Kwanzaa.
That's right.
What I will be doing today for Women's Month is talk about 7 women who have contributed to our history using the principles of the Nguzo Saba. Umoja.
Go ahead, son. I'm sorry.
Umoja means unity. We should be striving for and maintaining unity in the family, community, nation, and race. For this principle, we will use Queen Nzinga and Bandi of Angola. This warrior queen fought colonization for decades, and the Portuguese slave traders were no match for her. Queen Nzinga grew up with a sharp understanding of the devastating results of Portuguese colonization, which depended on slavery to expand its reach and riches. This mighty queen refused to allow them to control her nation, expand their slave trade in Central Africa. Queen Nzinga used Umoja by organizing a resistance army using mercenaries Africans the Portuguese had trained. Despite being in exile, she was able to unite her people and command their respect. She hand-selected soldiers who pretended to be defectors so that they could infiltrate the Portuguese armies. Once inside Portuguese ranks, they attacked. This show of loyalty to Queen Nzinga made black troops under Portuguese domination leave and join the Queen. Always encouraging rebellion and increasing her wealth, her armies, and her power by blocking Portuguese access to slave trade routes, Queen Nzinga had developed an effective anti-Portuguese coalition that virtually held the Europeans at bay for 30 years. She had been called the greatest military strategist ever. Queen Nzinga ruled firmly, continuing to lead her troops through her 60s, and despite repeated attempts by the Portuguese and their allies to capture or kill the Queen, she died peacefully in her 80s.
Shit, let's hear some of that. That's what principle? Oh, no, I'm talking to the audience. That's what principle?
Umoja. Unity.
I love it.
He's ready. He's ready. He's ready. He's ready. Go ahead.
Kudijakalia means self-determination. To define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. For this principle, we will use Wilma Rudolph. Nicknamed the Black Gazelle, Wilma Rudolph was born premature and was stricken with polio as a child. Though her doctor said that she would never be able to walk without her brace, she did not let them define her and her place in the world and went on to become a track star. She created a name for herself by becoming the first American woman to win 3 gold medals at a single Olympics in 1960.
You finished with her? You still on Kudijakalia? Okay. Okay, you and I? Okay, so she got to come back. Thank you. What was it, Brent? What was that?
Kudijakalia. Self-determination.
I got it. We got you. We got it. You got to keep it moving. You got to keep your troops fresh, though. Keep moving.
Ujima means collective work and responsibility. To build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together. For this principle, we will use Coretta Scott King.
Right.
Coretta Scott King is known as the wife of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but she was more than just an accessory to her husband. She was a gifted singer and a violin player that led her to attend college in Boston where she met Dr. King. She was also a famed activist in her own right for civil rights, women's rights, and against war. She participated in the Montgomery bus boycott, worked to pass the Civil Rights Act, and took a vocal stand against the Vietnam War even before her husband did. Mrs. King applied Ujima in everything she did, while her husband was doing his incredible work. She raised the children. She also made speeches, gave freedom concerts to benefit the movement, and worked to get the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed. After Martin Luther King's assassination in 1968, she carried on her husband's mission after Josephine Baker declined her request to take the helm of the civil rights movement. Coretta Scott King then stepped into the role herself. She also made the problems of the black people in South Africa her problem and brought awareness and inspired demonstrations against apartheid, as well as... Can I say this?
You can say this. What is it? Show me. Yeah. That's right.
As well as gay rights for the gay community.
She was ahead of her time with that. Is that now? Are you finished with that principle?
Yes.
What principle was that? What principle was that? What's it mean?
collective work and responsibility.
Man, we gotta take care of this young man. He's ready.
Come on,
Right?
baby.
Come on up. Here we go.
Ujamaa means cooperative economics. To build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. For this principle, we will use Madam C.J. Walker. Born on a cotton plantation to slaves, Madam C.J. Walker's relentless desire to make a better life not only for herself, but for other African American women led her to become one of the first women millionaires. Madam C.J. Walker was a philanthropist and used her success to help other African Americans. She founded scholarships for black students, donated money to different African American institutions. Walker also lobbied politicians for civil rights. Walker wanted African American women to get ahead and have careers where they can make a decent living. She used the principle Ujamaa by opening a school called the Walker College of Hair Culture. Women were trained to style hair, sell Walker's products, and even given the opportunity to open their own beauty salons. I am not satisfied in making money for myself, she said at 1914 convention of the National Negro Business League. I endeavored to provide employment for hundreds of the women of my race. Well said, madam. Well said. Nia.
We finished with this one? What's the principle? Grown folks. Grown folks. Y'all hear me say this every month. We got a problem with this. This one needs a lot of fixing from grown folks. A lot of our problems ain't got nothing to do with our children. It's what grown folks don't do with their money. Right? As you were. As you were.
Nia. Nia means purpose. To make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. For this principle, we will use Sojourner Truth. Sojourner knew her purpose was to use her voice to free women and slaves from oppressive classes in society. She fought tirelessly for women's rights and to abolish slavery. After her escape from slavery with her infant daughter, Truth learned the illegal sale of her son into slavery and successfully took his owner to court for his freedom. This was one of the first cases of its kind. Originally named Isabella Baumfree, she gave herself the name Sojourner Truth when she decided to fully dedicate her life to activism.
Hold on a second, son. Hold on a second. Does anybody know where Sojourner Truth was a slave? What state she was in? Somebody. I didn't hear you.
New York.
New York. And New York is not in the South, is it? Just that's your word. What principle was that?
Nia.
I can't hear you, grown folks. Children.
Nia.
Nia. All right. All right. Go ahead, son. Step forward. You know what to do.
Ka'uba means creativity. To do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial as we inherited it. For this principle, we will use Adina Bayo. Known as a serial entrepreneur at age 13, Adina Bayo had escaped the Civil War in her native country of Liberia, immigrated to the United States, and is now one of the most successful entrepreneurs in her home state of New Jersey. Adina began her career as an entrepreneur at an early age. After attending a public high school in Newark, New Jersey, and putting herself through college, she secured a job in banking and began purchasing multi-family homes as investments. But she didn't stop there. She got creative and took real estate investing in a direction that no one could imagine. She is the founder and CEO of Adina Bayo and Companies, which is the parent corporation that owns the IHOP franchise in Newark and Irvington, New Jersey.
She owned a house.
Yes.
She is also the owner of a restaurant called Cornbread located in Maplewood, New Jersey, as well as a real estate and development portfolio that includes the redevelopment of the former Irvington hospital space that she saw can make a blighted area better for the community.
What's the principal?
Kuumba.
Kuumba. Now, this is a young woman too. I mean, I don't think she's 40 yet, and she's really out there. Right there. That's an excellent contribution, son. Thank you. What? The name? That's that, Madam Councilwoman. That's why we go to IHOP in Irvington.
Adina Bio?
No, that's a different owner in Bergen. That's a brother.
She owns both of and she owns cornbread.
Oh, go ahead. All right. Go ahead. Hey, I remember God, the history of cornbread.
They said, what's her name again?
What's the name? Let him answer.
I'm sorry.
Adina Bio?
Adina.
Don't tell me they're asking you.
Want me to say it again?
Yes.
Adina Bio.
Thank you.
There you go.
Imani means faith. To believe with all our heart in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, in the righteousness and victory of our struggle. For this principle, we will use Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. During her campaign for presidency, she vowed to boost Liberia's economy and get rid of the corruption and civil war plaguing the country. But before that could be accomplished, she had to get the position in 1997. Sirleaf ran for office and finished in second place in the presidential election. But because she had faith, she didn't let that stop her. On January 16, 2006, her perseverance paid off when she won the presidential election. Ellen became the world's first elected black female president and Africa's first female head of state. She lived up to her promise so well that she was re-elected in 2011. She has received numerous awards for her incredible work, including the Nobel Peace Prize. And there are so many other examples of what these amazing women have accomplished using the Iguzu Sabra. Ladies, we truly appreciate you for your contribution to our history. Ashe.
You will collect them all. You got your hands blocked there. As you were.
One more thing.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you for everything you do.
Oh, there's a gift. Presentation from Mama Sandra.
Blocking the shot. Zaid.
Huh?
You're blocking the presentation.
I'm trying to.
Oh, Zahid.
Come on, all in. Wait. Come on. Thank you.
It says, it's our donation.
Wow.
And it says, thank you so much for your love and support. Thank you for believing in the importance of learning our history.
That's right.
Because of this, we are better and stronger. Thank you, and we love you. Thank you.
Madam Felony, Mr. Jerry, hold on, stay there, Mama Sandra, stay there, son. Stay there. Mama Nikki. This is Mama Nikki Ellis. Nikki Ellis homeschools these children and is becoming a serious entrepreneur in her own right. And you can see she's instilling these principles in her children. So I wanted her to be actually embrace her elder as she makes this contribution and let us have that teachable moment. All right? Can I have it?
Yes.
We got to get you up.
You told me to take it from where I was.
I'm going to tell T.
You only got 3 of them.
It's okay, he said that's enough.
You only got 3. Wait a minute.
Okay.
As we're doing, I want to acknowledge Vice Chair Ingrid Hill, who just walked in the house. She actually did a few minutes. Right?
One more. You got it?
There you go. That's the official one. Okay.
You got it.
Very good. Beautiful moment. Beautiful moment. Beautiful moment. Thank you, Mama Lee.
Since the kids been coming here with them practicing their principles of economics, this was from their business. They make earrings.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, they make earrings and pens and pencils. So this was from their earnings.
Bless you.
And I had wanted to say, the popcorn kids, they were donated 40 tickets to go to the no for the museum in Washington. Yes, so I have to see about doing a fundraiser to get that bus. Yeah, so that we can go.
Foundation's gonna donate that bus.
Get out!
And they in Orange. They ain't even in Irvington.
June 30th.
So if I can go, I will see if I can get there. I will help you do a tour guide. Thank you.
Awesome. That means I don't have to go.
No, that does not mean you don't have to go. But I won't worry about your ticket. I can work what I need to do, but I need to make sure. And I want to help you guys walk through that museum.
Okay, June 30th. Yeah, every year.
Okay.
Yeah, every year the kids go down to the Black Caucus.
Right.
Yes.
I definitely will. Yeah.
Awesome.
Wait, it's a great day today.
Best qualified rewards of all research. You must appreciate that what we're talking about, the Amistad Commission, engendered by the Amistad Bill, came right out of Irvington, New Jersey. William Payne and Craig Stanley, right? Came right out of this town, this small poor chocolate town in Essex County, gave us something that has revolutionary implications for the entire country. Malcolm said, if you want to see real change in America, the key to seeing real change on the issue of race is going to be education. Right? And here in our state, we have on the books the tool by which to infuse the kind of teaching of history and social science so that can happen. But what should happen is a little elemental force that says it's a mandate. All of y'all got to do it so we get this right. Right? But the person who is now in a pioneering position to anchor that work and to develop that curriculum and who's already on her post and has been doing it in a very stellar way, right, is our guest, Dr. Stephanie James Harris. Y'all give her a round.
Where you want me? You want here? Because I don't want to go behind the table. That's too distant. Hi. How's everybody? Please do. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Dr. Stephanie James Harris. I'm Stephanie, or Miss Stephanie. And I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Amistad Commission at the Department of Education, or within the Department of Education. And yes, the law that is on the books, the Amistad Bill, the mandate, is actually the first in the nation. It is the law that mandates that African American history will be included within the K-12 social studies curriculum for the state of New Jersey. And it is a dream deferred, I say, from Carter G. Woodson, because what most people don't understand is that is exactly what the Association for the Study of Negro Life was supposed to be in 1922. What it manifested into was Black History Month. But what the original intent of his legislation and his push was that would be educational programming and educational facts that would be coming out of the African school movement and pushed into the, I'll say, standard K-12 curriculum for the nation. And Carter G. Woodson's ask was all the work that was in the Journal of Negro Life would be pushed into the school districts across the nation, and he picked the month of February between the weeks of Frederick Douglass's birthday and Abraham Lincoln's birthday, specifically because he thought it was a month in which people could understand and commemorate that work. It never quite made it to the space of curriculum development as it was originally intended. So the Amistad Bill, for me, is the homage to the work of Carter G. Woodson that he began in the 1920s. work that said that this material was important enough that it needed to be studied all year round. And so the state of New Jersey actually manifested that in 2002 and created an Amistad bill. Our office was created with staffing in 2005, and I've been the executive director since 2006. And our job is a big one. It's a big lift. It's one in which we're really trying to regulate in a state that has 600 plus school districts, and a state that is also the 5th most segregated state in the nation. And I heard you speak about the reality of the policies, you know, even in regards of Linda Brown being a legacy. There's 2 terms that I want everybody to understand, especially the kids, when you understand how laws work. I want you to come with me. You want to teach your name? Okay? Okay. I miss having little ones like this. I have 2 boys, and one will be 16 tomorrow, and the oldest one will be 18. So this is, and when I began this work, so you remind me of this. I began this work, I had one, how old is baby? 2.5? You're 2? How old is he? 2. He's 2. When I began this work, my youngest was, the one that is 16, was about 2. And there was many a day when they were in the front row, up and down the road, and on their hips with me like this on Saturdays, to watch mommy do their work. And I said to people all the time, I brought them for my inspiration. Sadly, I have one that's graduating from high school, and as I said, the youngest one is in 10th grade. I said that if I did my work right, by the time they came out of high school, when I had little ones on my hip like this, it would be a much different society and educational policy that they graduated to. We still have a lot of work to do because I have one that's graduating. And there's many school districts that are still challenged about understanding this narrative and what it had to be. You better get down. You sure? You can stay with me if you want to. So the Working Commission was really to make sure that this made it into the K through 12, that it was regulated. We're the first state in the nation to actually do this work. We were the first state of the nation that said, we understand all the commemorations. We do want to make sure that we always celebrate Black History Month. We do want to make sure that these narratives are celebrated in, in the fashion of not saying that we want to replace Black History Month, but that our narrative is American history. There's no way to separate the two. American history and Afro-American history are intertwined. You cannot talk about United States history without talking about African Americans, and you cannot talk about African Americans without talking about the narration of our historic facts and who we have been in this nation. And so the Commission's work is on curriculum development, it's on educational policy work, it's on informing communities, it is on teaching teachers, making sure that the materials are relevant in the classroom. It's also on making sure that people see the interconnectivities and they understand the broader narrative. Just like when we talked about Mr. Peterson, right? For most people, they'll stop at the fact that we have this famous African-American man without understanding the implications for the 15th Amendment. That is the reality of what the Amistad work is. For those of us that don't understand, we look at Linda Brown without understanding that the challenge for her as a 5-year-old, and then by the time it made it to a Supreme Court decision, was about constitutional law and Supreme Court decision-making. You cannot segue the two. And Afro-American history is not in silo. So my work here today is great. The reality of being able to be invited here does not go without a sincere thank you. I appreciate your work, even more sometimes than mine, because this work is tireless. This work is sacrificial. This is the work of a continual for the African Free School Movement.
That's right.
This is the work of people that have decided that our children needed to know who we were, even in a world when everybody has discarded the messaging of who we are. Representation is so, so important. For our children most especially, but for the world to understand who our children are. Everyone here was little sometimes, and you have no idea what seed or nugget you are planting and what it's going to mean. So for it to be 63 Saturdays of your life that you've dedicated to this is mind-blowing. Thank you. So my notes that I wrote, because when you're driving sometimes you say, what exactly do you want to say? I'm not going to hold you long, but the ancestors always speak. Oh, and by the way, the little boy's name was Matthew Duncan. I had to think about what his name was. I had to look it up. So the young gentleman with for the National History Day is Matthew Duncan. And I want to encourage you, and the reason why I brought Matthew to the Summer Institute to meet the teachers is because so many teachers discourage certain students from doing certain projects. And so his project, to make it to be second prize for the state in a study and a narrative that does not consider those kinds of topics scholastic, was very important. And I wanted people to see that there is empowerment sometimes, and even the fact that his parents supported him and pushed the school district to do it, but also to give a little pushback to school districts that are thinking that this is not an important narrative. It is important for the study. It is important for scholarship. And our kids should be encouraged to choose what they want to study and for it to be taken seriously and to not be pushed away, because this boy was articulate, he was smart, he was driven. But the greater message, I think, for him is that his parents gave him room for this to happen and for it to be accepted as second prize. There's no stopping his capability or his desire to push forward. And our schools sometimes really negate our kids from doing the work. The level of work that you see here, that I've seen here today, is worthy of being and going to National History Days. Sometimes it's just the teacher that actually takes you under the wing and says, let me pilot you through the program. So this kind of stuff is important, because what our kids don't understand is that there are kids that are prepped every Saturday in suburban districts all over for this kind of work that are being nationally recognized, and they don't even recognize that these kids are doing it just as well, just as articulately with topics that relate to them. So it is important that you continue this work and that the kids are encouraged to do these kind of presentations. So my notes, you said March, Women's History Month, and we were going to try to honor and as the ancestors bring things together, I thought about the children shall lead them. So I thought about two young women, whose sunset and sunrise both commemorate in the month of March. We talked about this young woman, Linda Brown, whose sunset was this week. This picture, she was 7, and of course we know the story. Linda Brown resided in Topeka, Kansas, and her parents wanted her to go to school across the street. They bought the house on purpose. And she was denied access to that local public school as a kindergartner because of the segregation law and because of the Plessy versus Ferguson decision, Supreme Court decision that said separate, and I call it the separate but unequal law, right? The long struggle for the NAACP was fighting on that premise, and by the mid-1930s, they had started legally challenging that separate but unequal tenet by suing states and school districts to actually make it equal. So it was a great strategy. They actually called them on their bluff. Okay, separate but equal? I want equal. But they knew that, especially in the 1930s, that the Great Depression would not have most school districts able to finance the equal. So they were suing school districts and saying they got 772 books in this school district, we need 772 books. They've got 5 cafeteria, they've got 5 trays in the cafeteria. We need, oh, what you say, we don't have a cafeteria? Oh, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they have 4 bathrooms. Oh, what you say, they want our kids in the outhouse? So all of that became a part of the legal challenge, and they were going state by state by state by state by state. Most people know Brown versus Board of Education, and this little girl becomes symbolic of Brown versus Board of Education. Just like most people know Rosa Parks. And I know that you said that the kids got exposed to Miss Colvin, right? Claudette Colvin. So for a lot of times, we don't realize that the person that is often in the forefront and the person that becomes sort of the face of the movement is often the face of the movement, where there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people that have contributed to the struggle. So for my sunset, I want Linda Brown. Did you remember we talked about March being Women's History Month? This dynamic young girl who was willing to put her face and her family willing to put her out there, and was listed first as a plaintiff because of her last name. That's what most of us don't understand. It was Brown, but it was 5 cases. 5 cases, 5 different states that the NAACP bundled together to challenge the Supreme Court decision. Because for it to make it to the Supreme Court, it had to have been multiple cases that had all made it through the circuit courts, that were all legal challenges in regards to segregation. And so by the time it makes it to 54, to the Supreme Court, they must list it alphabetically for all the different cases. So Linda Brown went first. And so forever we know Brown versus Board of Education. But I want to talk about another young girl, and the children shall lead them, in Virginia. And her name is Darlene Davis. Darlene Davis actually goes second. And Darlene Davis's name goes second because she was actually a young girl who, along with her best friend, Barbara Johns, walked out she's writing her name.
You got your back.
Thank you. I got you. Thank you. Right? Walked out of Robert Russa Morton High School in Prince Edward County, Virginia. This is when you know stuff goes full circle. Barbara John was born March 10th. You talk about 1931.
I got an ancestor we didn't get to yet. Keep going.
Right. Barbara John was the niece of Vernon John.
Go ahead.
You got it for a second. See, Vernon John was the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. When Vernon John was retiring as the pastor, his job was to interview its succeeding pastor. They did a nationwide search, and Vernon John selected a 26-year-old minister who the rest of the church board said absolutely not. Can't possibly hire him. He's never been behind a pulpit before. Who is he? He's new to town. And Vernon John said, I like him, I want him. And he bequeathed his pulpit at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church
Come on.
to Martin Luther King
That's right.
Amen.
in 1955.
That's right.
But before that, his niece, Barbara, had resided with his brother in Prince Edward County, Virginia. When she was there, her and her friend, Darlene, challenged the segregated school district and the conditions at their high school that was originally built for 150 student maximum, and by 1951 had 476, and they had built chicken shacks on the grounds to accommodate the students. The students' condition thought it was conditions were so bad that they actually staged a student walkout at the high school. She was encouraged by her uncle to do so. After the walkout, they contacted their uncle, who helped them and directed them to the NAACP, who took on their case, Davis versus the state of Virginia, or Prince Edward County, Virginia. And that case became the second case behind Linda Brown's case and was compiled into the Brown versus Board of Education. Most people don't know about the other cases or about the other youth. For Linda Brown, it was her parents. For the state of Virginia, it was high school students that walked out of unfair conditions. Barbara John ends up threatened within an inch of her life, so much so that her parents actually have to get up and move to Alabama. She actually is not listed as the plaintiff in the case because she wasn't even able to finish high school in Prince Edward County, Virginia. So by the time, and she was not a resident in the state anymore, Miss Davis was. Barbara John goes on to become civil rights legend, and Prince Edward County, Virginia, as a plaintiff in this decision, is actually forced to desegregate after the Brown versus Board of Education decision, led by children. Another thing most people don't realize about Prince Edward County, Virginia, the state and the county refused to desegregate the school district. They closed the entirety of Prince Edward County, Virginia schools. I want to say 7 years.
Wow.
No public schools in the county, rather than to desegregate them.
Wow.
I could go even further. I'm scared to do it. Like, we got newspapers here, right?
You want to get that down.
The state vouchers, they started a private, county started a private public partnership to create monies, not even going to say what it sounds like, to start their own school districts, specifically in Prince Edward, became the guinea pig for those kind of collectives, so that certain students could still be able to go to school. There is a forgotten generation in Prince Edward County that never got their high school diplomas.
Wow. Wow.
Because they had no public school to finish. And most of them were those same high school students that walked out and started this movement. So there's a lot of legacy for you guys and your age. There's a lot of legacy in regards to children really, really leading the way. It's not a new fact. But unless they're supported by families and communities, they don't know the strength and the power that they have. You guys are in a really good space with a lot of adults that are surrounding you and that are grounding you and letting you know who you are. Barbara had Vernon. You need the adults to lead the way. But you all are our future. You're all our future. And so my job is to make sure that you see representations of yourself. It's all it is in its most basic form. The history has already written a narrative that you all are there. My job is just to make sure that it shows up in your classroom so that you can see it. With that in mind, I know that there's nothing that you cannot do. I don't know what else. Do you want me to take questions?
Stay right there, stay right there, stay right there.
Oh, I was going to talk about Miss Harriet.
I'm stealing teachable moments. Now, you said something about March 10th, right?
Yeah.
Now, we also know, stand up, Madam Teacher Arthur, right? No.
I know
March
exactly.
10th was the day she went to the land of the ancestors.
It sure is.
But that young lady right there helped us find her birth date also, which is also in March, March 15th.
That's right.
Right? So this, you know, where these dates can come together, the numbers and the ancestors in the universe, they talk, and we need to listen.
We do.
Right? Right? Go ahead, Mickey.
And her museum.
You didn't say who it was.
I don't have to. Should I have to? Who, well, all right.
That's Moses.
Right? Harriet Tubman, right? Okay.
Her museum opened exactly
General
last March
Tubman.
last year, right?
Yes.
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 General Tubman.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
They just celebrated 1 year. Was that last week? They just celebrated
That's right.
1 year of the
That's right.
National Park and
That's
her
right.
museum.
That's right.
I actually had the pleasure of going. The Afro-American Museum in Baltimore does a Underground Railroad tour on the Eastern Shore, and I wish I don't have anything to project it. We actually went to the plantation where she was raised. I actually had an opportunity. They're preserving the enslavement houses. And so I actually got a chance to see the house. I saw the store where she was narcolepsy. That story just she had narcolepsy. You guys know what that is?
I thought I had it.
Narcolepsy. when Harriet Tubman was a little girl, when she was about 10 or 11, yeah. Was she older than that? She was coming out of a store, and the young boy that she knew was being chased, and she was asked to intercede, and she kind of was startled. She didn't know what was going on, and I don't know if it was an overseer or his master, I don't know what it was, but threw an iron, and young Harriet was in the way and hit her in the head, and it knocked her out, and she was out for days. When she woke up for the rest of her life, she had a disease called narcolepsy, which is sleeping sickness. Now, sleeping sickness means that you literally fall asleep. You can't control it. People with narcolepsy can't even get a driver's license in the United States because you don't know when you're going to fall asleep. You can't control it.
I thought I had it.
And it's serious. You're out. She suffered for the rest of her life from narcolepsy. And yet, she took 19 journeys under circumstances most of us can't even imagine, and freed hundreds of people to freedom, with people on her back, realizing that the only way to even get to freedom was with her and through her as a guide, knowing that she could fall out asleep anytime. I can't even imagine what that must have been like. Do you know where she made all of her money? Mrs. Neck can tell you. Where did she make all of her money? Where did Harriet Tubman, where was she when she was working? What state did she work in to make her cash?
Between New Jersey and Pennsylvania, but she was in New Jersey when she first came out, and was working as a domestic.
Where? In Cape May.
And what was it?
Lawnside, Snowden Hill.
Right.
Which is right by my house, right?
Malcolm was mayor of Lawnside.
Was it? Get out of here.
That's right.
Very well. I know the Bryan family very well.
That's right.
I'm actually on the board,
Right.
Lawnside Educational Foundation. So yes.
Oh.
Snowden Hill, which she got a job as a domestic in Lawnside because of her friend William Still, who helped her find work. And Snowden Hill was an all-black town, which still is, in southern New Jersey, in which it was land given from the Quakers when the Quaker Church decided it was going to free its slave population. And it's right next to a old historic Quaker town, Haddonfield. And so they gave those that they freed from enslavement under gradual emancipation in the state of New Jersey, plots of land in the adjoining town so that they could still work. They would be in proximity to come over to Haddonfield to work. So Snowden Hill, which was actually named after a town in Maryland, right? They brought it, and it named Snow Hill, into southern New Jersey. And so Harriet Tubman made her money between southern New Jersey, or two parts of southern, and Cape May, and those Victoria homes where she was a domestic. So New Jersey's history is laced with a lot of history. And it's important that you all know that. So next time anybody goes to Cape May, go down and take the tour of African American sites in Cape May. Find out what's there. See the houses and the restaurants, and realize in some of those Victorian houses, Harriet Tubman worked hard, toiled hard to make money to free other people. That's our history and our legacy. Yeah. You guys have any questions?
Could you tell them about the curriculum that's online?
Yes.
And how accessible it is to them?
So the state decided that it would be very important that for teachers to really understand the Afro-American history. And I should say that we knew that this law is the first law on the books. New Jersey does not have central purchasing for textbooks. I was vice president of the school board. I know exactly how these things work a lot of times. So textbook selection becomes very subjective to each respective district and each respective district's sort of curriculum mapping that they do. And so we knew that there would be issues with trying to select a textbook that really did this work, because there was no sort of infusion model ahead for them to really be able to even follow that. And we also understood that for a lot of the teaching personnel in the state of New Jersey, a lot of them had never taken any kind of coursework in Afro-American history or content. And so there would be a deficit of even historical knowledge to begin to work a push-in sort of model. And our interest was not that we loved a lot of the Afro-American history textbooks specifically, but we also understood that a lot of teachers, if they had not really been familiar with the narrative, to know how to sort of marry the two in a really rich and a way that was actually keep the integrity of the law. And so we did a textbook search, and we decided that we just would start from scratch. And because we also understood that work for teachers needed to be something that could keep up with the recent scholarship and additives all the time. I mean, think about all the history that's just even happened in the last couple of weeks, let alone years, right? So, there's now, we can now add the name Trayvon Martin or Stephon to the narratives, and there's a frame of references that people now know that was not there. So we need to always keep it current. Right. And so we decided that we were going to do an online textbook for teachers. And so we wrote the curriculum, and a part of our commission structure is that we have professors that are on our commission board that are appointed. A lot of them teach Afro-American history or English throughout the state. And I'm also a professor of Afro-American history. And so we sat down and we did a K through 16 kind of mapping. What is it that college students get into a college classroom and do not know? Right. And so then we pushed it back, and we began to scaffold back to kindergarten. And so we said these are the things that they should know. And we had an opportunity, because the commission says that we can call on any other state agency that we needed to. We were part of the rewriting for the statewide curriculum standards for social studies, so that we made sure that those materials were included in the standards, so no districts could say, well, it's not in the standards, or it's not a part of what we need to cover, because it is a state law. So that there would be no way around this material having to be done. And so the online textbook for teachers, the curriculum map, is available for every teacher in the state or public organization or library or college or pre-service or community or homeschool classroom, you name it, we allowed it to be used for the state. And it is, can I get some Blackboard? Sure. It's NJ Amistad curriculum.net. You can simply register and sign up. And it is the totality of what would be considered United States History 1 and 2, specifically in mind for all of the Afro-American content that is standardly left out of the textbooks. Curriculum. NJ Amistad curriculum.net. And it simply says, if you say register new user, you can simply register. It's all of the school districts, all the community programs and stuff, most of them are populated. If it is not, all it will do is it will send an email to my office asking for permissions for you to come in, and you're welcome to use the bookwork. I know a lot of homeschool people have said that they really liked it because we were a little ahead of the curve, and we actually have a Blackboard sort of shell in there, so that you can populate your classes, because what we found is a lot of times teachers were saying that they needed, before Blackboard sort of became sort of standard, and for those of you who don't know what Blackboard is, it's sort of an online educational platform where you can sort of load all of your students in, you can give them assignments online, you can have them send you notes, you can submit homework. It's a way where you can communicate with them 24 hours a day. And so there is a platform for that, and so a lot of the homeschool agencies have said they've been using it because it's allowed them to have some interconnectivity, in various homes and still do collective work. You can do assignments back and forth. It is adapted for special needs and for special accommodations. It will read to students. It can translate to about 170 different languages, the entire site. So we did that because we had a lot of English learning teachers that said that they still needed to be able to teach history, but didn't have the time sometimes to wait for the students to get to a place where they were proficient in the English language in which to do it. And we have a lot of North Jersey districts specifically that have varied ethnicities and nationalities in their classrooms. And so you can literally assign a student and have them log on to their particular computer and translate the entire thing to Spanish or Cambodian or any language there. And so they can read it, they can write it, they can do everything and translate it back and forth. So it has adaptions for eyesight. It reads. If a student is stuck on a word, you can actually click on a button for a dictionary. So it becomes its own thesaurus, because all of this stressing towards test, a lot of time close reading of the text for like the PARCC exams and all these exams that we were having required students to really be able to grasp quickly big meanings. And so if they didn't understand a word, they couldn't grasp the meaning. And so our interest was to make sure that they had a thesaurus and a dictionary right on hand, and so they could click on and really get a meaning of a particular word, so that they didn't lose their steam and have to walk away from the computer. It's also organized in both English language arts, and social studies, with them both being cross-parallel. In my perfect world, if I was to rewrite our entire educational structure, I would teach in blocks, and that's the reason why I did that. I think that we too often have kids that are in an English class and are having to learn all these great literature works, but do not learn the history as to who and why. And we are in a history class where we're reading all these speeches, but don't understand the narrative of the writers that are speaking to that. And so we have it done in a way that it marries the two, so that students can go back and forth, and so they can look at a historic space of history or time in history, and also be able to look at all the important speeches, or all the writers, or all the work of fiction or nonfiction that are attributed with that, or all the fables, or etc. I also stressed, and we did it because we had the, if you get to be creative, you get to be creative, right? And if you get to restructure social studies, you get to do it in a way that makes sense, especially for this state law. And so the narration of African American history starts with the diaspora. We specifically made sure that it did not start with the narration of our enslavement on these waters. So we went back and we did units of study on the African civilizations, because just as much as students understand Greek and Roman culture, they also need to understand who Mansa Musa is, right? Who Songhai is, who the empires are, right? Who Pianki is, who the Nubian, we needed to make sure that those knowledges were also in the classroom before we can become a conversation. I was talking to my sons and their friends in the car after they saw Black Panther, and my kids have had their mom all of their life, so they have a certain understanding, but I was listening to some of their classmates talk. And this real strength for me in Black Panther is that the kids don't know, they know it's fictitious. And they can't articulate why they're so proud of Wakanda. But I know it's because it's inexplicable that for the first time on the big screen in their lifetime, they're understanding who we were. And I love hearing them say, well, I want to go back to Wakanda, or I'm going to be a Wakandan. I love hearing them say it, even in its fictitiousness. Because what it says to me is that there is a certain pride that for the first time is instilled of them as a generation and who African American people are, even if it's fictitious. You know what I'm saying? Because they're seeing it and they're understanding, and they're actually wanting to visit, wanting to understand, wanting to study their cultural identity. And there is a respect that is given across the board of Africa's greatness in a way that is so important, I think, in this day and age. So I don't care if Wakanda's fictitious or not. I too want to sell my house and move and whatever. And I laughed and I left and
Anything beats Jersey, I'm sure.
Listen, I told my kids, because I love pearls. I said, he said he wanted to be able to hit his bone and it come. I said, I want to hit my pearl and my whole suit comes out. You know what I mean? Like, in the sciences, you talk about representation. Yes. The girls, and I said, and that narrative is nothing new. The beauty of African diasporan brain power is who we've always been. So, representation is really, really, really important for who our kids are going to be. And whatever opportunity, I don't care if it's fictitious, I don't care if, it's Marvel Comics, so be it. Let them see it. It's doing something for our kids. Yes?
Do you have dates for your summer? I think you do a summer institute?
Yes, actually I do, because we actually were trying to get it up on the site by next week. So we do a summer institute for teachers in which Miss Sandra was a part of it. We created it specifically, and actually Miss Annette for many, many years. Before she retired, I'm gonna have to pull her back because she can't leave me yet. When we did this, we also realized that we needed to actually teach the teachers. So we started a summer institute for teachers. It is residential and/or commuter option. It is 3 or 4 days, and it's in 2 locations in North and South Jersey. Right now it's on the campus of King University in the north and on Rowan University in the southern regions. It's during the summer, and we asked the teachers just to come and be willing to learn, because we wanted them to understand what an infusion model is, and we usually do it topical, and I usually try to pick a topic that teachers can walk through and sometimes can challenge them to really think about the narrative and expand it and learn to have difficult conversations. So I usually choose something that's somewhat problematic, because I also need them to understand that regardless of how it sits with you or resonates with you, it's got to be taught. So can we have those conversations about how to teach it? So Ms. Sandra walked straight into a conversation last year about lynching. And a whole entire, and everybody thought I was crazy. How in the world? But we did it, right? We did it. We talked about lynching. We talked about the reality, the history, the narrative. We also talked about expanding the binary, because everybody always thinks that lynching is a black-white binary, or that it's male. Right. And so we talked about the reality of what it is, its history, its narrative, its continuum, its legalness, and all of that. And really commemorated Emmett Till last summer, and really talked about him as, like Linda Brown, right? An exemplar that sort of